Hello and welcome. Today I got this 286 mainboard and it is in awful condition. It is actually a very nice and fast mainboard with a 16 MHz Intel CPU. However, the barrel battery leaked badly and damaged wide areas of the board. Usually I don't jump on to repair a board instantly and do it whenever I have time for it, but in this case the damage is so immense that this mainboard will continue corroding and if not already, will be beyond any repair soon. So let's see what I can do. First of all, the leaked battery has to be removed, as well as the corroded keyboard connector to better see the impact of the damage. The problem with corroded solder joint is that you barely can melt them. The thick oxidation layer doesn't transport the heat properly and fresh solder doesn't want to stick on it. So neither a soldering iron nor the desoldering station would be of any help, at least until you remove the oxidation as much as you can. This can be done by scratching the surface of the solder joints. As far as at least parts of the old solder are visible again, new solder can be added then to reflow the joints from inside. After that, you should be able to use the desoldering station to release the parts. Unfortunately, this doesn't work for the battery joints on this mainboard. They seem to be too much corroded, so I'll just cut the battery off the board for now. It does look very bad indeed, and I'm not sure if this mainboard will ever work again. The corrosion goes under the IC, so they will have to be removed at some point as well. The battery acid can be neutralized using white vinegar. Here you can see the chemical reaction. The biggest chunks of corrosion can be removed then using a toothbrush. It's worth to repeat the procedure a couple of times if the mainboard is as much corroded as this one. Unfortunately, vinegar tends to evaporate and run off the board. To keep it in place, I'm using a piece of paper towel drained into vinegar. I also push a paper towel into the slot to let the vinegar work there as well. I left this like that for an hour or two. The keyboard connector goes into the white vinegar as well. Under closer inspection, I realized that the corrosion somehow got around the edge of the whole mainboard. I don't know how that is possible, but it has to be cleaned as well. Unfortunately, it looks like the edge is also covered with a kind of oily film, so the vinegar will not get through it. To get rid of the dirt, I gently use glass fiber pencil and then add white vinegar around the edge. After some time in vinegar, a flathead screwdriver and a glass fiber pencil can be used to gently scrub the oxide off the traces. As you can see, with a paper towel, vinegar could be held in place and the slot is now clean of corrosion. Okay, time to clean the battlefield. Let's wash the mainboard with some soapy water. After about 20 minutes of soaking, the whole mainboard can be washed with a brush and a soap from both sides. The soap must then be completely washed off with clean water. After about 24 hours of drying, it already looks a lot better. However, it is definitely visible that some traces between the ICs are corroded too. The socket for the keyboard controller is in a bad shape as well. Some pins are very corroded and one pin has completely vanished. Time to remove some ICs in the socket. Unfortunately, there is a problem. This image is from unaffected part of the mainboard and shows how the solder joints should look like. They are clean and shiny. These, on the other hand, are the pins from corroded parts of the mainboard. As you can see, they are covered with oxidation. Trying to desolder these joints, as they are, would be a lot of pain. To solve this, I use a Dremel to remove the crusty oxidation from all the affected joints. This is how it looks like after the oxidation was removed. Now, the joints should be more or less easy to desolder. Since the surface of the mainboard is already weakened, I decided not to risk too many lifted traces and only to remove some ICs, which are definitely affected by the corrosion. Unfortunately, not all went easy. Some solder joints were too corroded and didn't want to melt. I ended up damaging some IC legs and probably also some traces. Now visible traces can be gently cleaned using a polish tool. It works a lot better than a glass fiber pencil, especially if you don't like to pull tiny glass shards out of your fingers. The corroded traces are now thinner and exposed to the air. To avoid further corrosion, they should be tinned. Therefore, after cleaning everything with the IPA, I add a layer of flux and go with a drop of solder over the traces. The power lines were heavily corroded and are now too thin. I'll enforce them by adding a copper wire and cover everything with plenty of solder. Checking for shorts. And we are fine. Now it's time to search for broken traces under the ICs. I found these 3 traces either corroded or lifted when removing the ICs. I'll have to make jumper wires on the back side after the ICs are installed. I'll use sockets for the removed ICs in case one of them needs to be replaced later. The jumper wires can now be soldered to the dip sockets on the back side of the mainboard. Searching for broken traces is a time-consuming job, so I skip that part. You can use a multimeter in continuity mode to detect all the broken traces and add jumper wires one by one. This is where I ended up so far. Time to reinstall the ICs, but before I'll polish away the oxidation and resolder the missing legs. They got very brittle by the corrosion and I accidentally broke them off during the desoldering. Okay, time for the first test. I didn't yet have soldered the keyboard connector, but in this state the mainboard should actually show some signs of life. We will need a post analyzer and APC speaker, which would help us in error case. Well, we have some post codes in the analyzer, and the mainboard gives us some beeps. The good news is, it is more alive than dead. I'm not sure what 3 short beeps mean, I guess it's like memory error, but let's add a graphics card and see if something changes. Okay, now we are getting only 1 beep and we have a video signal. However, the error message doesn't help me much at this point. CMOS inoperational. Just in case, I cleaned the BIOS socket, but it didn't help. So I made some deeper analysis and checked the pins of the ICs where I soldered the jumper wires. And look what I found. One of the address lines between the real-time clock IC and the keyboard connector seem to be grounded all the time. The address bit 0 through 6 have some kind of activity, but bit 7 is dead. I validated and fixed the issue of camera, but here is the problem. One of the broken traces should go to this resistor. If we count from the right, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then count the pins on the back side, 1, 2, 3, 4, we will land at this joint. However, the right pin would be the next one. The 4th pin on the back side is actually ground and belongs to the 3rd resistor. How could that happen? Well, the problem is that the first pin belongs not to the first resistor, but to this capacitor. So, long story short, I mixed the solder joints and grounded 1 bit of the address line of the real-time clock. Okay, let's give it another try. Oh, 8 beeps. This already sounds different and means that the graphics card is missing. And all the address bits are active again. Let's try now again with a graphics card. Okay, invalid switch and memory failure. I guess this one should be easy to fix. There is exactly 1 megabyte of RAM currently installed on this mainboard, and it has this switch to set up the memory. I worked with similar mainboards before and I don't quite remember the right setting, but I think it was switch 2 or 3. Let's go with 3. What can go wrong? And the system is posting. We are a huge step further, but counts only 512K of RAM. That is definitely wrong, so let's switch the third switch off and try the second switch instead. And we have 1 megabyte of RAM. Nice. At this point, we can ignore the FDD controller failure, since there is no I/O control installed. Also, we have currently no keyboard connected. Actually, there is not even a keyboard connector soldered yet. So, time to put it back. Okay, time for another try. I'll connect the external battery to avoid any CMOS settings errors. And in case we will be able to boot, let's put a compact flash card with MS-DOS on it. I will also need an IDE controller and keyboard. I guess I was too optimistic. That didn't work all that well. But we are on the good way, so let's see what else we can find. First comes first, we have to check the voltages. Okay, as you can see, the keyboard gets its 5 volt properly. Now let's set the multimeter into continuity mode and check the data line. It is the middle pin of the keyboard connector and it should go to the pin 39 of the keyboard controller. And as you can see, there is no continuity. I can't see any trace going from the keyboard connector to the keyboard controller on the surface. Probably there are corroded traces inside of the PCB itself. So these are the pins. We have to add a jumper wire from here to here. And here we go. There is now continuity between the keyboard data line and the keyboard controller. Next try, and yay, the keyboard seems to work again. Let me set up the compact flash geometry and try to boot into DOS. And I didn't believe it, as I saw the mainboard first, but it is alive. Let's see what landmark says. Well, looks good, let's say. And sysinfo seemed to detect everything fine as well. Sorry guys, but it wouldn't be me if I wouldn't try Wolfenstein 3D. This seemed to run as well. It is as good as it can run on a 286 and I find it pretty impressive. I mean, look, it is a bit choppy, but it is still full screen. Okay, I'll do some more gaming, testing off camera and see if it runs stable. So far, this is how the mess looks like now. I didn't believe that it would ever work again and it need a lot of jumper wires to get it there again, but I'm happy to have another nice mainboard back to life. I hope you enjoyed this work, at least I did. I learn every time I do this something new and maybe you could take something useful with you as well. Please leave your comments, likes or dislikes below as always. If you like such kind of videos, please consider to subscribe to not miss my next video. So far, that's it from me. Thank you and goodbye.